Hello students and welcome to this summary of Learning Unit 1, Close Encounters with International Communication and the Information Society. By the end of this session, you should be able to answer questions, whether it is MCQ questions or assignment questions on the key concepts, theories, and case studies covered in the unit. So, let's get started. First, what exactly is international communication, or IC? IC is used interchangeably with the term global communication. In the broadest sense, it covers the flow of information across borders through media such as news, film, and television, through satellites and ICT infrastructure, through tourism and migration, through diplomacy between governments, and through electronic communication like Skype and e-conferences. Obviously, e-communication has changed considerably since this particular study guide was written, and now there are so many other forms of e-communication. IC is a multidisciplinary field. It draws on economics, politics, computer studies, international relations, and media theory. A key term to remember, IC and global communication are used interchangeably. This is, for example, a favorite question that we ask in our MCQs. One of the great scholars in international communication, Mulwana, outlined 4 approaches to studying the field in 1997. These 4 approaches are commonly tested, so learn them by name and description. The first approach is the idealistic humanist approach. IC, in this case, is seen as a positive force that brings nations and peoples together. It assists international organizations to serve the world community. The second approach I see as propaganda. International communication is seen as a tool for ideological confrontation, advertising, and the creation of myths and cliches. This approach recognizes that people often accept media content without checking whether it is true. The third approach is the approach of economic power. Here, information is seen as economic power. Weaker peripheral nations are dominated by stronger, richer ones. And the fourth approach is political power. Information carries political influence that may not serve the recipient's best interests. Here's a tip. If a question asks, which approach sees international communications as a means of bringing nations together, your answer will be the idealistic humanist approach. Now let's look at what an information society is. This concept is central to the entire learning unit. The WSIS, the World Summit on the Information Society Declaration of Principles in 2003, provides the most important formal definition. An information society is one in which everyone can create, utilize, and share information and knowledge, enabling people to achieve their full potential and promote, and this is important, sustainable development. There are, however, different scholarly perspectives on the information society. Some scholars see it as a product of technological determinism. The spread of computers and ICT created a new kind of society. Others treat it as a cultural phenomenon, a social construction produced in postmodern discourse. And finally, Manuel Castells sees it as a form of social relations, configuration of complex networks of social relationships. Frank Webster is credited with developing the information society theory. He identified 5 key characteristics that define an information society. These 5 are almost certain to appear in either multiple choice questions or can be tested in assignments. So make sure that you know these well. Firstly, the first characteristic is a technological characteristic. The diffusion of ICT, which is information communication technology, and computer hardware is the defining feature here. Countries with advanced technology are considered information societies. Those without are not. Then the economic characteristic. Information must play a significant role in GDP and job creation. Fritz Matschlitz's 1960s study of the US information industries found that they accounted for around 30% of GDP, and that was a landmark finding. You can imagine what that must look like 60 years, well, almost 30 years, 70 years on. Then the occupational characteristic. An increase in people employed in information-related jobs signals an information society. Daniel Bell argued that professional and technical occupations organized around knowledge will dominate, and we have seen that that is very true. Then the spatial characteristic. Space, distance, and time become less significant as obstacles to communication. They are turned into commodities, selling advertising space, airtime on radio and television, and mobile data. The concept of cyberspace as a real territory also emerges here. And then cultural. ICT promotes culture and foreign cultural influences become prominent. Local and foreign cultures produce what scholars call glocal, global plus local, hybrid cultures. Culture itself becomes a commodity, and a commodity means something that you can trade, something that you can sell. Now let's look at a very important concept, the digital divide. The digital divide refers to inequalities in the availability and use of ICT and the internet, both between and within societies. It produces what scholars call information-rich and information-poor countries. There are two key dimensions. Firstly, the global dimension. Developed so-called first world societies are fully integrated into the global information society. Many African and other developing nations are less developed and not fully integrated. And then the within country dimension. Even within a single country, there can be a major urban-rural digital divide. South Africa is a good example. Strong mobile phone use coexists with very limited computer and internet access, particularly in rural areas. Digital exclusion contributes to digital illiteracy and a shortage of e-skills, which in turn then creates development barriers rather than economic opportunities. So now let's turn our attention to the specific case of South Africa, which is used throughout this unit as a key example. The study guide refers to the following statistics. In 2018, 54% of South Africans had internet access. That's about 30.8 million people. In 2017, 88.2% of households had a functional mobile phone. 32% were active social media users. Only 0.1% of households still had a functional landline and telephone. The key findings here, South Africa ranked 92nd on the ICT Development Index in 2017, down from 88th in 2016. Other African countries, for example, at that point, Nigeria, Mauritius, and Tunisia were advancing faster than South Africa. High mobile phone penetration did not reduce digital poverty or improve livelihoods significantly. And Sub-Saharan Africa still had the world's least developed ICT infrastructure. And this was according to the World Economic Fund statistics from 2012. Now let's look at updated statistics. In 2025, the country's internet penetration was up to 79%. So that is about 50.8 million people. 96.1% of households owned at least one mobile phone in 2023. 42% of the population were active social media users in 2025, and still only 1.1% of households rely exclusively on landline telephones, while around 5% still have a landline. Now important, the ICT Development Index is no longer produced in 2026, but recent indicators have shown that South Africa's connectivity continues to improve, and this is largely driven by mobile internet access. Other African countries, such as Nigeria, Mauritius, and Tunisia, are still advancing faster than South Africa. The South African government has developed several laws and policies to promote an information society, beginning back in the Thabo Mbeki era. Key policies include the Telecommunications Act 103 of 1996, the Telecommunications Amendment Act of 2001, the NEPAD Easy Broadband Project covering 23 countries in East and Southern Africa, and the ISAD Plan, that is the Information Society and Development Plan. South Africa's goal expressed in its ICT vision is to be an inclusive information society where ICT-based innovation flourishes. But critics note that this vision has not yet been realized. From 2009, the government shifted to a multi-stakeholder approach for ICT skills development. Partners include government ministries, universities, civil society, business partners, global partners, and the South African government has then been criticized for failing to implement a clear and effective ICT policy, with issues such as nepotism, corruption, and a lack of coordination noted by several industry analysts. And this is something that must definitely be kept in mind. Study Unit 1 makes an important distinction that there is a difference between an information society and a network society. Information society is broadly defined as a society that lives, works, and plays through the exploitation of ICT. Brown emphasizes the convergence of computers and telecommunications. South Africa's own definition from Parayachi is a society that provides ICT access to people so that they can improve their work and lives. A network society, on the other hand, as theorized by Manuel Castells, goes further. It is only possible once ICT deployment and information production processes are fully established. The network society is driven by a technological revolution in information storage, processing, and retrieval. It transforms economic life, mobile banking, political life, like online voting, and cultural life, like social media. A tip. South Africa is considered to have failed the test of a network society as of the period covered in the study unit because most citizens lack full ICT access. And we have seen from the earlier statistics that now by 2026, that is unfortunately still the case. Study Unit 1 or Learning Unit 1 also covers ethical dilemmas that arise in an information society. These include surveillance and privacy. Governments can use new media, for example, to monitor citizens. Data security. Your personal information can be extremely vulnerable. Intellectual property rights and digital piracy. Disinformation and propaganda. The need for new legislation to address media convergence and data access. The unit also requires you to know several theoretical frameworks used in international communication. These include the free flow of information theory, dependency theory, the structural theory of imperialism, the world systems theory, which uses the concepts of center, periphery, and periphery, semi-periphery, and periphery, electronic colonialism theory, modernization theory, media and cultural imperialism, and you should also know the distinction between technophilia, which is a positive utopian view of technology, and technophobia, which is a negative dystopian view. So let's summarize everything we learned in this unit. International communication is global communication, it's multidisciplinary, and it's driven by ICT and the internet. Mulwana introduced 4 important approaches to IC: the humanist approach, propaganda, economic power, and political power. Then we have Webster's 5 characteristics: technological, economic, occupational, spatial, and cultural. Then let's look at the definition that the WSIS provided. Everyone creates, utilizes, and shares information. That leads to sustainable development. We should always keep in mind the digital divide, which is an ICT inequality between and within countries. We have information-rich and information-poor countries. You can look at the South African statistics, the old statistics as provided in the study guide, as well as the new statistics provided in this presentation. What is a multi-stakeholder approach? It is something that the South African government has introduced when it comes to ICT. And this includes government, universities, civil society, business, and global partners, all working together. And then keep in mind the very important distinction between technophilia and technophobia. Technophilia is a positive or utopian view, whereas technophobia is a negative or dystopian view of technology in development. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation. Next up will be a presentation summarizing Learning Unit 2.